And I'm going to invite our next panelists to come up on the stage. We're going to switch to our second topic, which is climate change and ecological transition, the role of Provence and its rosé wines. And here on our panel, we have Laurence Berlemont, who is the director of the Office of Provence Agronomy. And she is the head of a grape growing consultancy that has helped over 60 Provençale properties transition from organic to biodynamic farming. She has also worked with the Brangelina Chateau Miraval and created Chateau Margouis, which, of course, George Lucas ended up purchasing. And I'm not sure if it's going to be from the Avengers or from Game of Thrones, but you're probably going to have more people coming from the big screen into Provence. That's my prediction. We also have with us Roman Roth, the winemaker at Wölffer Estate Vineyard in the Hamptons of Long Island, and Finca Wölffer in Argentina. Roman makes a range of wines, which I'm sure all of us have had at some point or another, that includes not only several rosés, he also makes rosé cider, he makes rosé gin, he makes rosé verjus, and he makes rosé vinegar. Roman has not only embraced yes way rosé, he lives it. I'm surprised he's not wearing a pink shirt tonight, but that might have been taking it too far, in all fairness. And now we're going to have another introduction to this panel with Eric Lambert, who is the president of the syndicat AOP Coteaux-Varois en Provence. He is the president of the Ascendant Vigneron and the president of the Cave Coopérative Saint-André à Seillan. Eric?
Bonjour à tous et merci d'être présents aussi nombreux ce soir.
Hello everyone. Am I on? Hello everyone, and thank you for joining in such great numbers to be with us tonight.
En tant que président du syndicat de l'AOP Coteaux-Varois en Provence, je porte collectivement des projets liés à l'adaptation du vignoble au changement climatique.
As the president of the Coteaux-Varois Provence Syndicate, I work on all of the collective projects that are taking place in the vineyards to fight climate change.
En tant que vigneron, je suis sur le terrain pour appliquer ces mesures à mon vignoble.
And as a winemaker myself, I am obviously also applying these techniques in my own vineyards.
La Provence a une expertise dans la production du rosé qui est mondialement reconnue. Le rosé de Provence est devenu un style recherché et une référence.
The wines of Provence, the rosés of Provence, are recognized worldwide. It's a style that is globally known, sought after. It's a reference point.
Cette excellence n'est pas le fruit du hasard.
This is not the fruit of hazard, of chance.
Elle repose sur un terroir exceptionnel, baigné de soleil, entre montagne et mer et balayé par le vent.
It is due to our exceptional terroir set between the sea and the mountains, bathed in sunshine and swept by the winds.
Ce terroir a permis au vignoble provençal d'être des plus impliqués dans l'agriculture raisonnée et biologique.
And it's this specific type of terroir that has allowed Provence to be at the forefront of sustainable and organic agriculture.
Il y a plus de 40 ans, la filière viticole provençale a mis en place des outils collectifs pour entamer une révolution du rosé en créant notamment un centre de recherche et d'expérimentation spécialement dédié au vin rosé.
About 40 years ago, the wine industry of Provence began its revolution in rosé, putting in place a number of collective tools, most notably the Center for Rosé Research and Experimentation that has led to this elevated status of its rosé.
La réduction de l'empreinte environnementale est un sujet clé, mais le produit rosé est un produit à part, délicat, qui a besoin de solutions spécifiques pour conserver ses qualités intrinsèques, telles que le sec, l'aromatique et le frais.
As we are witnessing everywhere, the reduction of our environmental impact is our environmental footprint is key, but the production of Provence Rosé rests very separate, very much apart because of its delicacy. And because of this style of rosé, we need to take specific solutions, find specific steps to preserve the intrinsic qualities of Provence Rosé. That is, its freshness, its dryness, and its aromatic verve.
Notre challenge est de répondre au marché tout en étant attentif à l'aspect environnemental. La filière provençale s'est lancée le projet collectif de convertir l'ensemble du vignoble en HVE, haute valeur environnementale.
So our challenge is to respond to the needs of the market while keeping in mind respectfulness for the environment. And as part of this, Provence has launched a collective effort to convert its entire vineyard scape into what is HVE, or high environmental value.
Nous devons préserver la ressource naturelle pour nos enfants et pour offrir dans les années à venir aux consommateurs du monde entier et aux touristes visitant notre région des rosés vrais.
And we must preserve this natural resource for our children, and so that we may be able to continue to offer to wine drinkers around the world and to visitors to our region the real rosé.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. It's very interesting that Eric brings up the urgentness of our impact on the environment. Last week, as many of you are very much aware, maybe you were even there, there was a great presentation on climate change at Ven Expo. And Patricia Espinosa, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, stated research showing that agronomists today believe that today's arable land for viticulture, in a best case scenario, could be reduced by 62%, and in a worst case scenario, up to 73%. So while it has been ingrained in all of us as lovers and students of wines that vines should struggle to make good wines, the sensible mind knows that there are limits to everything. Okay, so now we are going to dial into our long-distance virtual panelist, Gilles Masson, who is the developer of the Rosé wine color chart. I consulted it this morning. I'm wearing Pantone A4, A5. It's really more of a Chiarasuolo or Frappato. It was not intentional. I just don't have that ballet slipper pink color in my closet. I will make that investment soon. Gilles is also the director since its inception about 8 years ago, the Center for Research and Experimentation on Rosé, which is based in Provence, appropriately in a ballet slippered colored pink house. And he's going to explore with us some of the primary signs of climate change in the vineyard and how those changes are affecting rosé production.
Seul centre de recherche dans le monde spécialement dédié au vin rosé. Une équipe de 10 chercheurs travaille sur la qualité du rosé et son amélioration. Nous avons des programmes de recherche qui partent du terroir jusqu'à la table du consommateur, avec une attention particulière à la transition écologique et au réchauffement climatique. Les principales manifestations du changement climatique, notamment dans nos régions méditerranéennes, ce sont la chaleur et la sécheresse. On nous annonce des chaleurs importantes, notamment en été, et des précipitations de plus en plus rares qui risquent de faire souffrir la vigne. Alors, le risque du changement climatique pour la vigne, ce sont des récoltes moins importantes en quantité, mais également une différence au niveau de la qualité, avec peut-être des raisins trop mûrs qui pourraient engendrer une différence de typicité dans nos vins. On sait qu'on aime les rosés frais, fins et fruités, notamment les Provences. Et si on ne change rien, cette typicité risque d'être modifiée. Il faut garantir à notre rosé de Provence, ce joli équilibre entre l'alcool et l'acidité. façon de s'adapter à tous ces changements qui sont annoncés, c'est de créer de nouvelles variétés de vignes pour l'avenir. Nous avons lancé il y a 3 ans un programme de recherche original et ambitieux avec nos collègues de l'INRA et de l'Institut français de la vigne et du vin, un programme qui s'appelle Edgar, qui consiste à croiser des variétés résistantes avec quelques-unes de nos variétés emblématiques de Provence. Je pense notamment au cinsault et au rolle. La préparation de ces variétés permettra de répondre à 3 enjeux. Tout d'abord, celui de la transition écologique, moins d'intrants au vignoble, moins de traitements. Le deuxième objectif, c'est celui de l'adaptation au changement climatique avec des variétés qui résisteront à la sécheresse. Et le troisième objectif, c'est de créer des variétés spécialement dédiées à la vinification du rosé et aux Provences en particulier. Nos voies d'adaptation pour garantir la qualité du rosé de Provence demain sont au vignoble, avec de nouvelles variétés adaptées au changement, mais également un mode de conduite de la vigne qu'on pourrait réimaginer pour s'adapter à tous ces changements. Ce système de conduite de la vigne dédié au vin rosé pourrait prendre en compte un système de résistance à la sécheresse particulier, un système de travail du sol qui soit également imaginé pour le rosé, et enfin une architecture de la vigne, une gestion de la taille et de la canopée qui permettent de protéger les grappes de raisin qui pourraient être particulièrement exposées à ces chaleurs importantes et aux rayons du soleil.
So, as you can see, there is no shortage of ambition in Provence and with the research center and under Gilles' direction. So, in just 3.5 minutes of a video, maybe some of the top takeaways are fighting for the vineyard's health, especially in hot and dry conditions that are more and more consistently being encouraged during the growing season. The fight to maintain the iconic Rosé style of Provence, and of course the need to produce wine. As we just discussed, there have been climatic events in 2017 and 18 that have reduced the production of rosé wine in Provence, which is not very timely considering that our interest in it is growing. So we're going to have Laurence talk to us a little bit both vertically about some of these topics that Gilles has mentioned, looking at what the Centre du Rosé is looking at, as well as in her projects, and then also vertically looking at a couple of other projects that are happening in Provence, thinking about the future and our impact on the environment. Laurence.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm very pleased to be there, and as we saw in the first part with the first panel, we have an issue on volume because we need volume, and also we have an issue with the style of our wines because we found a style that the market likes, and we want to keep this style and eventually to improve it. So here I will give some example that Gilles Masson just in the video explained about a little bit. We have a target on limitation of the impact. First, an important trait of organic producers, because in Provence we are, we'll see, quite important in that way of production. We have new certifications I will speak about a little bit, HVE, that Eric Lambert just spoke about a few minutes ago, which is another label. Investments in cellars which are done in order to improve and limit our impact on the environment, and some other projects. It's some example among a lot of different things we are doing in Provence, but I was thinking it was interesting to speak about returnable bottles. So for the environment, we have to know that in Provence, roughly 20% of vines are cultivated in an organic way, which is quite a lot. For sure, Provence is a good area to produce in an organic way because we have sun and wind and it's quite dry. So it's a problem for the production, but it's good for organic way of production. But we also have another way, another target is to push the people which are not organic to follow another kind of rules which are HVE, which is another way of working who push people to improve their way of producing. And if you are interested in, I can go ahead a little bit more. This certification HVE, the target is to have a global certification which is recognized by the states, so an official recognition, clearly identifiable by the consumer, in order the consumer know exactly what that means, and based on 4 points we will see later. We want to create this unique label, easy to understand by the consumer, and bring added value to the effort undertaken. The 4 points I speak about for the HVE is to improve the way we manage the water, because we have a problem of water, we'll see later also. Management of fertilizers, to use only the fertilizers which are needed, not more, and on a good way and more natural as possible. To improve also our strategy on treatments, and organic or non-organic, and improve biodiversity in having, for instance, seeds which we keep around the vineyard, or to have hedges for the birds and all the little animals. If you have more questions on HVE, we can discuss after the presentation. Also in cellars, more and more of the cellars which are built in Provence are buried. That's a drawing of a cellar which is in process at the moment. And to protect against the heat, we are trying to bury our cellars. And also, I don't know if you can see quite well on this photo, but the tank on the left side is an isotherm tank, which permits to isolate very strongly the wine in order not to have to expand too much frigory in our winemaking. As I spoke about, returnable bottles. So it's a project that people are working on in Provence for 3 years, more or less. We just solve the different problem we had, as we have to change the glue behind the labels in order to be able to get rid of the labels easily, because it's stupid, but if we, before washing the bottles, we need to get rid of the labels. And now, more or less, we think that all the technical parts is solved, and for the vintage 2019, several estates and sellers will go ahead in this process in order to push people to bring back their empty bottles to be washed and reused. There is a second big point, is that we have to adapt to this global warming, to this change. As Gilles in the video said, we are working on old grape varieties which were forgotten. We were not using anymore for one reason or the other, but we are perhaps that now it could be interesting to have them back, or new grapes which are done with crossing some other varieties. Also the water management, which is a very important point, and another example of us by night, which is already the case more or less everywhere in Provence, but now also by hand, because it was quite easy with the machine, but even by hand we can harvest by night. So some example on old and new grape variety, but that's belong to the, at the moment it's a work which is done by the Centre du Rosé strongly. They work in new grape variety, but also they work on old grape variety like Cinsault, which are very very important in Provence, but we are working on different clones, which are different kind of cinsault, to try to find the best one to face this global warming. Water is a very, very important point. There are two things. The first point is that we need more water. We have a network of water called Canal de Provence, which permits to water. It was more or less in the west part of the Provence, and now little by little, this canal is extending in order to water more and more. But it's not because we have more access to the water that we have to use the water without thinking about it. So we have this point, which is we need more water, but also it's some example. This water we have to be careful not to waste, and we have some machinery which permits to know exactly what kind of quantity we have to add at which moment, because it's not because we have more water that we have to use it without thinking about it. So we have, it's a bit long now to explain, but we have some tests in the vineyard to test if the ground is dry and if we need to water, and also on the vines themselves, in order to understand if the vine is under stress or not, and if we need to water it or not. So that's studies we are working on for a long time now, I think more than 15 years. And also, it was a funny photo. The owner of Château de Chausse is from New York. And it's an harvest which is done by hand, by night. And until now, people who were harvesting by hand, by night, had a little light just in their head. But it was not very efficient. It's very difficult with just that light to look very well where the grapes are. And now we are organizing more and more a big light, like a football light in stadiums. And this light is in the tractor, and it permits to put the light on all the team. So it's very funny because you see some lights in the vineyards, which is going ahead with the tractor. And the quality is interesting because then we can harvest at a quite low temperature, because at night temperature is a lot less important. And that's it. So if you have any question, I will be happy to answer. But, yeah.
Could you just elaborate on the night picking of grapes versus day picking?
Sorry? Why? Because when the grapes are arriving at noon, for instance, in the cellar, temperature is at 35 or 40 degrees Celsius, and we have to cool it very strongly down for the fining, for the débourbage. I don't know the translation in English.
Basically to decant the lees.
Decantation, yeah. And we need to go down to, let's say, 12 degrees. So if you have to go from 30, 35 to 12, it's long, and you need a lot of frigory to do that work. If you harvest by night, we can be at 18 degrees only, and it permits to not use too much frigory and electricity and energy to cool down this harvest. And we have very strong machinery in all cellars in Provence to cool down these harvests. So if we come from 18, it's a lot more interesting than coming from 30, 35.
Thank you, Laurence.
You're welcome.
Fantastic, very innovative work being done in Provence. And now we're just going to step back into our backyard with Roman, the winemaker of one of New York's most recognizable rosé, possibly most recognizable rosé here, from Wölffer Estate. And Roman's going to talk to us about the changing conditions that apply to rosé winemaking in the Hamptons, and also of the soaring interest in rosé out there.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I put on my best Long Island accent for you. I'm very honored to be invited. It is just wonderful to be recognized that all these years of pushing rosé is just has taken fruit and is paying off. Also, I probably was a safe choice because Long Island will never make more than whatever, 1 million cases, so we're not a competition, a big one, but we do compete locally. Anyway, I'm originally from Germany, worked in Australia, worked in California, grew up making many trips to the Côte d'Azur and had too much bouillabaisse and a lot of Provence rosé, loved rosé. So when I came to Long Island in 1992, there was the Labor Day weekend, and Christian Wölffer had a party at his house, and there was martinis, and there was beer, and there was wine, and red wine, white wine, and I think there was a little bit of rosé too, Provence rosé. But I stood there, and there was the sea breeze on the veranda, and I saw the people dressed up beautifully, and I had an epiphany, and I said, we need to make rosé. This is rosé country here. And luckily, that was a good choice. So in '88, our first vineyard was planted. We farm sustainably now. We're 2.6 miles from the ocean, have a maritime influence. I mentioned many things and we'll come later to climate change in some ways. So great maritime influence. The Bridgehampton loam, it's one of the richest soils on Long Island. Good water holding capacity, but also very good drainage on sandy soils underneath the loam. So the climate used to be no winter damage, no spring frosts. We had sunny summers, but cooler nights. The last area to get a frost in New York State, so that gives us a long hang time, so you can get ripe fruit. So in '92, we started making the first rosé, Chardonnay, Merlot, Pinot Noir. But at the time, wines had to be big and rich and Californian style, maybe even sweet. Or they had to be French, and we were not French, and we were not fat, so we had a problem. It was very difficult at the time. But so what has changed in 31, actually? I'm forgetting my slideshow here, I'm talking. So what has changed in 31 years? So one big thing has changed is the style in general. Food has changed. People now eat less butter and less cream and more vegetables, more salads. So there certainly has been a big change that more elegant wines, or the focus on where is the food coming from, and local has been very much adapted in the last 20 years. That was not the case 25 years ago. More elegant wines with less alcohol, more finesse, more minerality, more acidity are desired now, appreciated, and less sweet wines. That the old sweet blush days are over, probably, in most areas in New America. So another big change, of course, was that what has changed is our vineyards have become more mature and older. The winemaker has become more mature and a little bit blonder over the years. Which means older wines means a more balance between your pH and your acidity in your grapes, the way the grapes grow and the way the grapes mature. So it has been much easier to detect the perfect time of ripening. It's like everybody's had an unripe tomato or an overripe tomato, nothing worse than that. And then you have the perfect tomato. And the same is with grapes. So it's very important to find that, and older wines have made that much easier for us. Older wines are less affected by stress. They have deeper roots, so much more stable conditions. More experience has come with age, better decisions. We know what to look for, we know what to avoid, and we focus now on quality, which is a big change for rosé especially. And it emboldened us also to be true to our own regional style with age, and not to copy anybody else, and so that this balance, less is more, and I think this has been embraced now. Our reputation has changed a lot over the years. Consistency is a big part of success, and everybody can make good wine in a good year, but to make good wine in a difficult year, that has been the key for Wölffer Estate to go on the map. And New York finally has embraced New York wines and Wölffer Rosé, and finally it's cool to drink Wölffer Rosé. So this has been a big change from begging people to even taste our wines 25 years ago. And what's also big and very recognized now is the food friendliness of our wines. I always say nobody can make better food-friendly wines in the US than we here in New York, and so it's a big statement. But with the final change, which is climate change, which has happened over the last 25 years, doesn't really show a lot. It shows that we have grown too 2.1 degrees Fahrenheit warmer in the last 30 years. It's not a lot the way these graphs show, but the fact is what's really changed is we pick now at least 2 weeks earlier than we picked 20 years ago, maybe even 3. It changes, of course, every year to year, but we pick for sure 2 weeks earlier, which is a big difference. The more inconsistent weather, we've had, drought period, and then all of a sudden you have so much rain where you don't know what to do. We're starting paddy fields soon at this rate. And the systems have become more severe that they can all of a sudden stay over New York, and they get fed by a new low that comes in, and all of a sudden for 6 days it rains. I mean, normally a rainstorm would come. The next day you had blue sun. That's why the weather was fantastic. And now finally you can have lingering system. That has been a big change. Hail, we never had to deal with hail the last couple of years. There were some vineyards had hail damage. Luckily not ours, but again, it's a bad change. So yeah, drought stress is our least problem. So there's a big difference. Yeah. So Rosé was, has been, and will be the perfect answer to all these changes, basically, and have been our big reason for change. And just to go in a little bit into this, the crop level is much more flexible. You can start with a big crop actually, which actually is quite nice because you want those fresher flavors. You don't want a low crop. So you want a nice crop. If you're starting with a big crop, well, if you really get a hurricane remnant and you're losing 15% of your crop, you still have a nice crop. So perfect. This is really a great way to start. How do you approach how to grow the grapes? It's less labor intensive. You do have to, for example, less leaf removal. We do leaf removal normally in the fruit zone to expose the clusters to sunlight so they dry off quicker. We don't have to spray as much. But with Rosé, actually, it's nice to leave a couple of rows, especially on the more sun-exposed side, which protects these driving when the northeasterner comes. You have more leaves, you protect your clusters from being beaten by the rain. So, and in the meantime, you're spending less money on leaf removing. And so what that means, also we can pick much earlier. So that is a big advantage. You have to spray less again if you're picking 5 weeks earlier than your normal Chardonnay fruit. So less hang time means less risk in case there would come a hurricane, knock on wood. The last direct hit was in 1991, but the threat is always there. So less hang time, less risk. Another thing is when you pick earlier, you have less dehydration. And that's a huge advantage because the bigger, the juicier your berry is, the more juice ratio to skin ratio you have. So you have less tannins to fight. You have less color. So it makes a more elegant, more balanced rosé. And on top of it, it's economically quite nice when you have 10% or 15% more berry weight compared to losing it to dehydration. So it is a very positive thing that you can pick your rosé early. It helps distribute your workload. So when you have your harvest planned, well, it's a wonderful feeling when you have 70, 80% in our case picked, and basically you can't take it to the bank till it's in the tank is the slogan. When you have 80% picked, you are much more taking bigger risks with your remaining 20% because you're already 80% safe. So you can improve your other qualities. So that's a nice change with why Rosé will have such a great future in the great future. So and then what has been a great strength for us is we have always used Rosé with at least 6 or 7 different grape varieties. So diversity has been our strength. And maybe that was the best ideas are always stolen, probably. So Champagne, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, Chardonnay is wonderful. You picking different times, making a more interesting wine, using different grape varieties. If I make only a Cabernet Franc Rosé, I would, I always say if I poke you, you know exactly what I mean. It can make a wonderful flavor, but it can also only be one particular character. By using 7 different grapes, we pull all the register and make a more harmonious and more interesting Rosé. And again, you pick your Chardonnay early, you pick your Cab Sauvignon for Rosé late. So that now even my Rosé I can pick over, normally I would have to pick, if I only make a Cab Franc Rosé, I would have to pick 1,050 tons in 1 week, which is impossible almost. So by making Chardonnay on different things, we pick over 3 weeks and I pick maybe 330 tons, 350 tons a week. So much better quality focus, much better, again, risk diversion. Like I guess if you're a stockbroker, I'm not big on stocks, but I guess diversify your investment. the Rhone adds Masson, Roussan, Viognier to Syrah. That gives you extra freshness. So using Riesling in a rosé can be beautiful, or using Gewürztraminer in our case. So Germany uses Badisch Rotgold. We have 50% white, 50% red grapes, and it's been very nice for balance. And Provence has so many grape varieties. So the Long Island. So for us, rosé was really, and why I mentioned this, it's important that this was an icebreaker rosé, because we had so much prejudice that we were focusing, and I mean rosé in general, or the blush wine, it was treated like a garbage can, and so we tried to make a quality rosé, and luckily Christian Wölffer embraced rosé fully. You have to have an owner who loves rosé, otherwise you don't treat it right. If you only love your big, fat, sharp, whatever Bordeaux wine, you will never really appreciate rosé. And so he appreciated rosé, and rosé was maybe less expensive, so it was easier to be accepted, easier to be bought. Oh, let me spend $9 on a bottle. I don't want to buy their $20 bottle, but let's try the cheaper one. So this was our icebreaker. And on top of it, you could still be a wine snob. Oh, I love my Chateau Latour and my Napa Cab, but the local rosé is quite good. So without losing faith, you could support rosé. So this was a big change for us. And in the meantime, rosé is more fun, the color, the feeling, the vibe, the pools, the beach. Welcome to the Hamptons, or to Provence, I guess. And of course, it's such a food-friendly wine, rosé. Perfect for our climate. Just to show you how proud we are, I mean, this was in 16, but we were the second most Googled wine in America, with $18 versus $302,876. And we were the 24th most Googled wine worldwide. This is just crazy for a tiny winery on the East Coast. So we did embrace it, and we're very proud about this. So, but just very quickly, I make this short. We started in 92 with 72 cases of wine. I mean, this is just a crazy wave that has come. And then in 2007, I think you can start to see where it's starting all to happen. So we really were on the forefront of pushing this variety, or this style of wine. We had in 2013 a stroke of genius to make the Summer in a Bottle, where you see I don't know if we have this, but the yellow, where we started to make our very colorful rosé and embraced this lifestyle even more. And that just exploded. And if we would be in a wine region where we would have 20,000 hectares of wine and many more wineries, this would have been even a crazier curve. But nevertheless, it is quite something. And then in 2015, we started the brown spot is the Argentina rosé, making now 15,000 cases in the meantime. And this year we're planning, certainly it's growing. It's a growing category, and we're pushing forward with it. So last not least, my conclusion will be the future. What's the future with climate change? So I think the future looks very good, because there will be less alcohol consumption, in some way lighter style basically I looked for, non-alcoholic wines. Wines with less alcohol will grow. Hotter weather will lead consumers to enjoy lighter wines. When you have your lunch, you don't want a 15, 16 volume% wine in your glass. You want something with 11.5, 12, 13, 12 maybe in your glass. So that will continue to grow. There will be a big growth on high-end rosés. Like we make a Grandioso, a barrel fermented rosé, with older barrels, so no new oak, but long lees contact, unfiltered wines, carbonic maceration. There will be concrete fermented rosés. This will be diversified. There will be much more money spent on fancy rosés. Not fancy is the wrong word. On specially made rosé, crafted rosé. And so, last not least, rosé will be, I think, we will take away from the beer market. I think that will be a huge growth. So rosé in cans, sparkling rosé in cans, rosé spritzer will grow dramatically. This hasn't even touched the surface yet. And the nice thing, why rosé is such a great thing, the real thing about climate change is you will have 3 fantastic years. You make the best wine in the world. So just imagine Long Island would make the best wine in the world, because other people will have hail and snowstorms and rainstorms and whatever. But then you will have 3 years where you won't maybe by yourself barely pick any of your high-end wines, because you can hopefully make rosé, but you won't make any of your high-end wines. And so rosé will be, because it's a faster cash flow, it's much easier. You don't have to age it for 3 years. It goes, you make it, next year's on the market. This will help you survive those curves. It will help you to give the cash flow. In our case already, we spend now, because our top red wines are now maybe 8% of our production. So now we can spend much more on those wines, because it doesn't hurt the budget. And we're making our other wines much better, which in turn will help our rosé production, or the value of rosé, as the other wines get better. So there will be a moving up and down, and only the wineries that will be very flexible will have a chance to survive these climatic up and downs that are coming. So thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have time for maybe a question or two? Yes, and we have a microphone coming from somewhere to the lady in the gray shirt.
Hi, I have a question for you, Mr. Roth, and I don't think your chart just showed it, but what is your export market like for Wölffer Rosé in terms of other United States and also like internationally?
Well, our biggest market is the tri-state area in New York. We are now in 22 states on the East Coast, and Chicago we're selling now, in California. But and we sell to 5 different countries like Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Japan. But it is mini. I mean, we sell 400 cases to Germany, for example, or 350 cases to Sweden. But when we don't need to, we can't make enough wine for this market, but we do it because you can't just wait in your tasting room to become a world-class known winery. So we do try to go selectively out to certain countries and sell a little bit, but it's not a big part.
All right, one more question? The gentleman here?
You spoke about HVE versus organic. Can you elaborate a little more?
Yeah. You want more details?
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, organic is quite well spread in Provence. We are 20% of vineyards which are organic, and I think perhaps Brice knows more, but these figures are increasing each year. But we don't want to say that organic is the only way, and it is not. So the Provence Wine Council decided to help and push people to have another label, another shot, another way of improving the production with HVE. And HVE, the idea is to say we don't want to compete organic versus non-organic. We consider that there is not the good one and the bad one. HVE is a way of saying to people, we are making an audit. What are you doing now? And the target is not to be better than the neighbor, but to better than you were the year before. And this HVE label is to say, okay, you've done that this year, great. What are we doing now to improve? Or you reduce the fertilizers, or you reduce the treatment, or you do things to improve the biodiversity, so and so. So you can choose what are your targets, and we consider that if each year you improve what you've done compared to the year before, it's already very interesting, because in that way, without pushing people to tell them you have to do that, but just to tell them what are you doing this year compared to the year before. The target is to go to 60% of Provence vines in 5 years, or organic or HVE labeled, and 100%, that's the target, for 2030 in 10 years' time.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurence. Thank you, Rowan, for joining us. Thank you for all of our panelists who've brought us so much interesting information, and to all of you in the audience for joining us. we have some really fantastic takeaways from tonight. The most important one of which is that there is still so much more potential for rosé in the U.S. market. We are still relatively immature. We saw that the circle graph that Brice had put up on the screen. We have a long ways to go to catch up to France, and we're going to have fun while we do it. We are still looking into new styles of rosé from different countries, including from our own backyard. We will probably, especially with the importance of social media and the role of talking about rosé, start enjoying rosé more and more throughout the years, not just concentrated in the summer and maybe in the shoulder seasons. We may have a rosé for après-ski, among other things, especially when we are talking about sunshine, outdoors, and leisure activities. And one thing that I think is really very interesting, thinking about this time span from, say, the early aughts, so 2006, 7, early to mid-aughts, up to today. And I was thinking about that campaign, this Summer of Riesling. And in the same time that all of the influencers were talking about Riesling and trying to get people to drink Riesling, it was mostly the trade that did that. But the consumer chose rosé. And it is, to me, looking like it is very much here to stay. So that concludes our presentation for tonight, but I want to point out a couple of things about what's ahead, because we're not done yet, if you want to stay with us. First, if you're looking for more information on anything that has to do with rosé, with wines of Provence, with the research, all the information that we've been talking about today, in addition to articles that have been written on a number of very topical ideas in rosé, you can go to Vin de Provence. We're going to have to take out our dictionary. So wines of Provence, but in French, vindeprovence.com. If you go into that upper right-hand corner under Iconic Provence, this is a new platform that is being launched right now with all kinds of information on the pillars of what makes rosé in Provence iconic, the evolution of consumer approaches to rosé, and of course climate change and rosé. I would like to invite all of you to come up with us to the 7th floor. Everyone's going to be up there. If you have more questions for them, you can ask the questions. We have about 36 rosés, including Roman's rosé from Long Island, as well as the Finca Wölffer. We'd love for you to taste all of those. You need to be shopping for your International Rosé Day celebration for social media. Get your apps ready. That's going to be on June 28th. Mark your calendar. Up on the 7th floor, we have rosé segmented in 3 different ways. We have one based on appellation. We have another based on ecological rosés, so rosés that are being produced in biodynamic or organic fashions. And then some developing rosés, quite literally in the bottle, as we look at what I have dubbed patinaed wines, wines that are aging well in the bottle. So to one of our questions earlier, how are rosés going to age? How do they age? Well, let's go take a taste. Also on the 7th floor, we are going to have Veronica Culligan. This is some of her work here. She's an illustrator, and she is going to be painting tasting notes on our rosés as we're tasting them. If anyone is going to SomCon in Washington, D.C., towards the end of June, Wines of Provence will be there. I will be there. We are going to have a seminar on the wines of Provence, and we are going to do a rosé pairing lunch, so come join us. And finally, don't toss your name badges in the rubbish bins. They are seeded with white flowers. Go try out your green thumb at home. Everyone's got a pot on a windowsill. And once your white flowers come up, I am sure that they are going to pair very well with the rosé in your glasses on your dining room table. Thank you all so much. Look forward to seeing you upstairs.